I discovered the affair when I came home early to tell her about my diagnosis. I suppose the only reason I am coming here is because, in my situation, the course of action does not allow me to fully disclose to those close to me. On the 1st of December, I received the news I was dreading. All of the tests have confirmed the diagnosis. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, so essentially, this will be my last holiday season. I am okay with what is going to come. I am at peace with that. I have had a life well lived. All of my loved ones will be taken care of. I am naturally a private person, so my wife, Jane, is unaware of my tests. I did not want to worry her until I had answers. So, I headed home early to have the talk. This is not something I wanted to do over the phone or text. Well, as you can guess since I am here, my life changed more than once that afternoon. When I arrived at the house, I noticed the car of one of my business partners in the drive. There was no mistaking it. Flashy, expensive, with a personalized license plate. To say this is out of the ordinary is an understatement. I pulled up our home camera system on my phone and noticed it was in privacy mode, not recording. So, I let it be and drove off to my farm property. Now, our camera system is for safety, and I never look at it unless there is a concern. With that said, I also love to watch for wildlife on the outside cameras. I also find it oddly satisfying to watch storms come through. So, for my own enjoyment, years ago, I configured a second video recorder to archive the cameras to local storage. That storage is not accessible via my phone. So, when I was at the farm, I opened up my computer and looked at the other server to confirm what my gut was telling me. And sure enough, there they were, snuggling in the living room, drinking wine, dancing, then going up to the bedroom suite. Apparently, they left the doors open because the microphone recorded their activities after they left the camera view. With my limited time left, I wanted answers. But I don't want the drama of a confrontation and divorce. Call me what you will, but all of my devotion and love for her left me that afternoon. I have all of the emotions that are to be expected. I know that I am not to blame. I have been a loyal, romantic, and attuned partner. I am now thinking about myself. I know what is important to me. So, I called my lawyer, and we reviewed my will and our prenuptial agreement. I told him what was going on. We worked on understanding how long and to what extent this affair has been going on. What has been found is disturbing. And I either clearly did not know the woman I shared over 2 decades of life with, or something in her changed. At this time, I am not going to say anything to my kids. Jane and I never had children. Or Jane. I am going to put on a stiff upper lip and get through the holidays. Give the kids and grandkids one last holiday memory with me involved. I will be the doting father and grandfather, and then try to play the doting husband role. The affair partner, AP, is a widower and has not remarried. He is a business partner, but not a friend. I do not invest with friends. I never married my twins' mother, M and F. It was her choice, and I completely agree with her that at that time, she made the correct decision. My kid's mother, Sarah, married a very wonderful man, Steve, when the kids were 7. Sarah and Steve never had kids of their own. I got my head out of my ass when the kids were 3. I have been very involved with them before that, but that is when I started my road to be the father I wanted to be. Sarah and I co-parented well together, and I would call Steve a friend. Sarah, Steve, and I are in our 60s. Jane is almost 60, and AP is in his 50s. Jane and I are both in our first marriage. We were in our 30s when we married. First update. I am going to provide some general information to help clarify my situation. Sarah and I were very young when we had the twins. They were a surprise but always wanted. So the twins are in their 40s, and the grandkids are all teens and older. Christmas is a week-long affair every year. We spend Christmas through New Year on the farm. We go cut down a tree after everyone arrives. We decorate, cook, play, and celebrate as a family. Sarah and Steve have been a part of this tradition since I bought the farm. I remain steadfast in not telling anyone until after the new year. If I told Sarah, she would not be able to keep it in. I don't want to place Steve in a position to lie to his wife. I want the kids and grandkids to enjoy the week. We will have plenty of time to cry and prepare in a few weeks. Jane's presence this week will just be a small detail in the long run. Really, I don't care about her anywhere near as much as the rest of the family. The finances are very interesting. Jane and I met and were married after we were both very established in our jobs and wealth. She had a good job with a great pension. She also had 2 inheritances that were in a trust. We agreed early on that we were both comfortable and we would not disclose to each other our entire worth by her insistence. We also have a prenuptial agreement where any property or trust that predates the marriage and any income from those resources are not considered marital property. Again, this was on her insistence. Now, I have provided both properties, housing with utilities. I purchase the travel, food, and fuel. Basically, I support her 100%. Her income and wealth are spent by her on herself. She purchased her car, clothes, personal travel, and cosmetic surgery. She is a very beautiful woman on the outside, but has shown she is very ugly inside. A few days after I got my diagnosis, I announced my retirement from the nonprofit. Now, knowing what I know, I noticed Jane was a bit uncomfortable. I can guess why. I will be around more often. So, tomorrow is my last day of work. Now, I will be focusing on spending time with the family. I gave the camera server information to my lawyer and gave him access from his office. So, I don't know if they had activities again, but I would assume yes. Again, I don't care at this point. I know who I am and what my worth is, and the affair partner, AP, is a big step down. As flashy as AP is, I am low-key. I drive a 15-year-old pickup truck. I like jeans and t-shirts and coveralls in the winter. I know for a fact that AP does not have anywhere near the wealth that Jane thinks he does. How? Since the trust has invested in his business, I receive quarterly financials. I don't tell anyone how much I have. That is between my accountants and me. But let's just say that the trust has been growing for 30 years. I live a modest life, and there is enough there for my great-great-grandchildren to enjoy the farm and have their education paid for. Once Jane knows what she lost, that will be her reckoning. I just won't see it. December really got busy. We did our normal social rounds these last weekends. AP was at one of the parties. It was hard not to keep an eye on Jane and him. I don't think I was caught. With being so busy and wrapping up everything at the job, I have had an easier time keeping it together. Jane has not expressed anything that would lead me to conclude that she knows I know. I am not proud of this, but I still sleep in the same bed. I have been selfish with her as of late. I feel like I am using her, but she has apparently been using me for at least the better part of this year. I am not as honorable as many of you have made me out to be. I hate this small amount of deceit, so don't worry about Jane getting everything because she will not. The trust is in great hands. I have detailed instructions on how it is to be managed. I have made plans in case my health turns for the worse sooner than I want, or if I pass unexpectedly. I have also made plans to have in-home care when it is needed. Jane will not be my caregiver. If I become incapacitated, the lawyer will tell Sarah, Steve, and the kids. Jane will be blocked from me. All important papers, valuables, and whatnots have been moved to a safe location. Finally, I have also started letters to each family member and Jane. Those have been harder than I thought. So, I wanted to update you all before all of the festivities start. Update 2. Mission accomplished. We had a great drama-free holiday week. I have made it to 2023. I apologize to anyone in advance. I find humor about my condition helps me. I am finding I am being a bit selfish currently. All of the participants dispersed yesterday afternoon. I only have a few updates because I am not going to talk about my week with my family. That is for me to cherish. Observations about my wife, WW, and this week. I honestly think this is the first time she stepped out. Being with all of us this whole week seems to have taken a toll on her. It's funny how, when you know something, a person's actions make more sense. She was secretive about her phone. She stepped out of our family gathering to get some air quite a few times. The best was when she needed to run into town, and one of the grandkids wanted to go to town also. The gymnastics she did to not take the grandkid were notable. I have to admit that I kinda played with it by asking, why not? So the affair is continuing. With me now retired, she is asking me about my plans for the day or week. So I go ahead and tell her, and then ask her what her plans are. Later this week, I will suggest we meet up for lunch due to me being in the same area as her on our plans. Just to mess with her. I guess it was true, as someone said in another post, unpredictability is the cheater's worst enemy. This morning, I met with my lawyer. I had made decisions and asked him to draw up papers. I replaced my temporary will with my new permanent will. That has been signed and should not have to change again. In preparation for all hell breaking loose, I had him draw up divorce papers based on the prenuptial agreement and the evidence of the affair. She gets nothing but 25% of our shared assets. Think housewares and furniture. I keep all of my liquid assets, retirement funds, and items I purchased with my own wealth. Also, if I push it, she is required to pay alimony. I have signed them and have a packet created with all of our evidence of the affair. I am holding this in case I want to use it. I sold my loan to the trust. I will allow the trustees to convert it to shares in the Affair Partners, AP company. Speaking of the trust, I have decided how I want it managed. I will drop myself to a 1% trustee. The twins will get the majority of the trusteeship. The 4 grandkids will make up the rest. All of the grandkids' proxies will be Sarah and Steve. As each turns 24, the kids' trusteeship will move from Sarah and Steve to the grandkid. If a fraction is left over, Sarah gets the extra value. I have planned a meeting with the kids, Sarah and Steve, for next week. I plan on telling them everything then. They have to sign documents, and they will want to know why I am doing this. So when this is done, my personal value will be my liquid assets, personal property, and the money from the AP's loan. So in the worst case scenario, Jane will get very little compared to the assets and value in the trust. In the next couple of weeks, I will disperse the few personal items I want to go to the kids and grandkids. Those are already at a safe location where my lawyer has access. Some of you commented on my health. Well, if I was not clear, I am not fighting this. I am letting nature take its course. So, I have no ill side effects from any treatments. I did notice this week I was more easily tired out. The family also noticed. I played it off as the old man getting older. I still have the cough. The cough is what started it all. It was my tumors in the lung that led to all of the diagnoses. I just played that as a lingering COVID cough. I expect to go downhill pretty fast once other issues pop up, but by that time, everyone will know. And thank you for all of your well wishes on that aspect. I am planning to spend time with the family. A large trip with all of their different obligations would be tough. That reason is why this week was so important to me. It was the last time I could be with all of them for an extended amount of time. I am thinking of a small trip for myself. We will see. I do plan on spending a day one-on-one with each child and grandchild. That is my next goal. The letters are not done. Those are very difficult. I will let you all know how the meeting next week goes. Update 3. I had my lawyer, a notary, the twins, Sarah, and Steve at my farm today. The tasks I needed are done. This process has gone about as well as it could have. Understandably, the family is hurt and angry. When everyone arrived and saw my lawyer and the notary, the tension in the room was palpable. I asked them to just sit and listen to me, and after I finished, they were to sign the papers. After signing the documents, I would answer all questions. They all knew about the trust. I explained to them it was time for me to release control of the trust to them. I explained how important the trust was in my life, why I started it, and how it was outside of my marriage to Jane by mutual decision. I also left instructions on how I wanted them to direct and use the trust. We explained that the trust would be split between the twins and the grandchildren, with Sarah and Steve having equal proxy votes for the grandkids until each of them reached the age of 25. Was done, copies were collated, and I dismissed my lawyer and the notary. I saw them out and thanked them for coming out on a Sunday. They both were gracious as always. When I returned to the dining room, acting as a conference room, they all were quiet. My daughter broke the silence with the first question. Well, it was definitely a multi-part question, or a stream of consciousness. As soon as she stopped, I started with my health. I explained the fact of my diagnosis. I listened to them making plans on how we are going to fight this. And this is where I stopped them. I explained the odds. I told them I have already had a second opinion. Then I told them what you all already know. I am not going to seek treatment. I am going to let nature take its course. We spent the next hour to an hour and a half arguing. My daughter left the room a few times. Sarah had to go get her. While they were gone, Steve, my son, and I had a heart-to-heart. They understand where I am coming from. They might not agree, but they understand. The consensus is that Sarah and my daughter will come around. After all this calmed down, and I knew the next question was coming. When did I find out? And I told them. And now there was another round of anger and sadness. I explained that I wanted one more holiday week where I was not a dead man walking. That I was selfish. I wanted this diagnosis to be after the holidays. I don't want it to taint their holidays for the rest of their lives. My daughter, sensing there was still more, went all Kojak. She was not going to leave the room until all were out. She asked how, and the hell did Jane not tell her? That is when I dropped the last bomb. I told them exactly the same account of events that I did in my first post. That is the first time I truly saw the fire of anger in my daughter's eyes. I then told them she, to this day, does not know I know. I basically answered the same questions, plots, etc. that you all suggested. So, I guess you all prepped me well. In the end, I told them I valued them way more than Jane. For me, I just want to spend the rest of my days in peace, not worrying about Jane. I had to explain my actions during the holiday week. They also pieced together her steps outside for air and the trip into town, where she did not want to bring the grandkid. They were worried I did this all alone. I told them I have some social media friends that helped me through the roughest time. I refused to tell them where and how. They can learn later, but I still want this space for myself. The emotions were really raw, and we have been talking off and on as a group for a few hours. But I told them I needed to go back and talk about the trust. They understand that the trust will be very helpful in not allowing Jane to obtain my hard-earned wealth, that it protects them. And that is why she is not part of this meeting. With that said, I then needed to share the financials of the trust. I am pretty sure that they all saw the trust as a tax dodge, or just a way to protect assets in a marriage where the kids are from another woman. They were not prepared for me to share the finances. As I started to go through the assets and the balance sheets, the room just fell silent. Then there was one question. Why did you work so hard those years when you had this much? I explained my philosophy of personal finance, something they have heard many times before and take to heart. But I told them that I lived off the trust all of these years. I put them through college with that trust. I made time in my life for them with that trust, and I was able to work for a nonprofit for basically free because of that trust. And if there is any example I want to outlive them and their children, it is to use this trust to do better for others. And not to just write a check for a charity here and there, but to work for something they believe in. In my years with this nonprofit, I have done so much more in training others and building relationships than just writing a check cannot do. I am not happy that today, everyone's lives at that table changed in so many ways, good and bad, because of me. It was not the way I wanted it to happen, but it is done. They know all of it. I have begged and pleaded that they let me deal with Jane, not to talk about the trust with anyone. We will run a status quo for now. When I get sicker, then things will change. They all have agreed. We spent the next few hours making a meal, talking, crying, laughing, and breaking into smaller groups. They all have left about an hour ago, but I expect the twins to come back. I know they will let their spouses in on what is going on. That is just the way they are. And I love my two in-laws' children very much. I knew that last night was my last quiet night. I feel a weight lifted, but replaced with another weight of worry. Update 4. I was surprised by a visit from one of my wife's WW girlfriends. She is about the same age as Jane. Her name is Carol, and she was with my wife last week for the girls' night. In fact, the girls' night was at Carol's house. If you read my comments, you would know that last week, Jane came home very intoxicated. She used a rideshare. Carol is an old friend of my wife. I guess being married for over 2 decades, my wife has forgotten that I introduced her to Carol. Carol's parents were friends of my parents. Well, I guess my unpredictability has contributed to my wife being unstable. And during last week's girls' night, Jane reached a breaking point. She got so intoxicated she confided in Carol about her affair. Apparently, she just kept talking, even after Carol told her to stop. Carol got so angry at her. As Carol kept condemning Jane, Jane just kept trying to defend her actions, while continuing to lay out an endless stream of details. The next day, Carol reached out to Jane. Jane apparently did not remember anything from the night before. Carol summarized Jane's confession. Well, Jane completely denied that she is having an affair, that she did not say those things, and that Carol is mistaken. Carol told Jane she is full of it and has a week to come clean, or she will tell me herself. And since Jane continues to deny that she said anything, I got my visit from Carol. So, over coffee, I got the abbreviated account of Jane's confession. Carol was expecting me to be devastated. I surprised her when I told her I already knew. I asked her who else was around when Jane made this confession. Carol was the only one else in the house. I asked Carol who else she has told. That offended her. She told me that she would not spread something like that before telling me. I apologized. I explained to her that I had my own timeline for wanting to deal with Jane, and adding others would complicate my plans. And I had to ask. Carol was understanding. I asked her, as a favor to me, not to mention it to anyone, and to allow Jane to think she believes her. Carol agreed to my first request, but said the second part doesn't feel right. I asked her to try. I told her I would be okay. Carol said that anything else I need, all I have to do is ask. I know that I will have to make another apology when Carol finds out about my health, but I will deal with that another day. So I am going to confront Jane tomorrow. We have a regular date night, and I plan on calmly telling her what I know, my condition, and how I am going to spend the rest of my life without her. I hope the public setting will keep the drama to a minimum. Whether it goes as planned or ends in a total disaster, I will update sometime this weekend. My plan is, after the confrontation, to give her what I know, asking her to not contact me or my family. We will see how it goes. Update 5. Mike Tyson once said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." Indeed, not every plan goes exactly as envisioned. Mine was no exception to this reality. Allow me to set the scene for my plan. Jane and I have a weekly date night, typically at the same restaurant where we have a regular table. It's in the back, still public but away from the high energy near the bar. I decided this would be the place where I would confront her, planning to do so after dessert. I had my lawyer and his wife make reservations for the same time. Before we began, I paid for both our parties' meals in advance. Our server, who has been serving us for years, was in on the plan. Carol was on call to assist Jane after I left. My intention was to end the meal with a discussion about our relationship, which I planned to record. Then, I would confront her about her infidelity, inform her of my diagnosis, and outline my wishes. I would hand her a letter requesting she not contact me or my family, or come to the farm, have the letter witnessed, and leave her with a briefcase full of evidence along with the divorce papers. I expected her to maintain composure to protect her social status. I did record the conversation. She praised our relationship and teamwork over the years. When I questioned her about whether I'd treated her right, and if she had ever been abused by me, she emphatically denied any wrongdoing on my part. Then, I confronted her about the affair. She tried to deflect, blaming Carol's misinformation, but I revealed that I had known even before Carol's intervention. This revelation left her pale and speechless, only able to utter, "What?" as her confidence waned. I recounted discovering the affair after my doctor's appointment, how I saw his car at our house, checked the cameras to find them in privacy mode, and decided to head to the farm instead. I mentioned still having footage, which nearly prompted her to interrupt, but I silenced her with a gesture. Revealing my diagnosis and decision not to fight the disease, I noted the sorrow in her eyes, which angered me. How could she feel sorrow for me now? At this point, I signaled for the waitress, who fetched my lawyer. He handed me a briefcase and a folder with the letter. After signing it in front of Jane, the server witnessed it. I then gave the briefcase to Jane, stating that it contained more information than she'd expect, including signed divorce papers. I expressed my wish for her to stay in our town home as long as I'm alive, as I'd be staying at the farm, and that I didn't want to hear any excuses. Carol was called to assist her home. Jane maintained her composure, managing only a feeble protest before I reiterated my decision to leave. After tipping the server generously and apologizing to the owner for any inconvenience, I left. At the door, my son and Carol awaited. Carol passed by with a mix of a smile and concern, while my son took me to the farm in my truck. My son and his wife stayed with me Friday night. I finally convinced them to go home at midnight. I went to sleep with a great sense of relief, albeit mixed with a renewed feeling of loss. Nonetheless, I was able to accomplish the task I needed to do. The family came to the farm on Saturday to ensure I was okay. Although I felt a bit coddled, it was a good day until Carol came by in the afternoon. She reported that Jane had fallen apart Friday night, but had contacted her affair partner, AP, on Saturday. After their conversation, Jane realized she was just being used by the AP and was in a really bad state. Carol made sure to tell me that Jane did not ask her to reach out to me. However, she felt that if I could talk with Jane for a bit, it might give Jane the strength to stay out of my life. Carol knows how to frame her requests. I reluctantly agreed to a 2-hour discussion at the farm with Jane. We would each have someone there for support. Jane chose Carol, and I chose my daughter. I aimed for the meeting to be as comfortable for Jane as possible, to avoid any need for repetition. My goal was clear, to ensure Jane's exit from my life. The meeting went as expected. Jane cried, apologized, and tried to minimize the affair, but I stood firm. I made it clear she would have a place to live until my death, after which the house's fate would be up to the trustees. I also explained she would not receive anything from my estate or the trust. Despite her substantial pension and trust, she had the audacity to ask, "Why won't you fight for me or us?" My response was blunt. "I just don't care about you or us anymore." This seemed to devastate her. Here, I must express my frustration. This situation highlights the selfish mindset of a cheater, expecting to be fought for after causing destruction. I refused to validate her actions with such consideration. Jane didn't truly want the answers she received. I am adamant about not wanting another meeting, as it would only distract me from my goals. Carol later informed me the trustees were converting the loan into shares of the AP's company and requesting a forensic audit. My daughter, with her MBA, was taking swift action. Jane, now realizing the AP's intentions were purely opportunistic, faced the harsh reality that her trust was exhausted and her glamorous expectations were unfounded. Her shallow and greedy nature was laid bare, a revelation I find both disgusting and relieving, as it spared my family further turmoil. Carol's unexpected offer of companionship threw me off. Despite her flattering view of me, I'm hesitant to introduce such complications into my life at this point. I've omitted some details, but these are the highlights. It's been a roller coaster, and I crave a few days of peace. Soon, my separation and diagnosis will become public knowledge, leading to an influx of well-wishers. While I've dreaded this attention, it's an inevitable part of my journey. Update 6. First off, I am doing okay. I'm still above ground and above room temperature, which is a blessing. My coughing has worsened a bit, and I'm experiencing some discomfort. I've noticed getting winded more easily, but overall it's been a great week. Let's start with Jane. She has essentially gone into hiding. Her standing in the community has plummeted swiftly. Once her actions became public, she was politely asked to resign from her leadership roles. Her social circle has judged her harshly, with many directly inquiring if she pursued their husbands. Jane has attempted to reach out a few times, sometimes through intermediaries. I've simply relayed that I've said all I need to and know all I need to. I have no interest in providing her with closure. She's aware of my feelings, as I've made them clear. Regarding the details of the affair, it lasted at least 6 months and included 3 trips, during which they indulged in role-playing. Jane's meticulous efforts to conceal the affair, including buying a second car for secret meetups, underscore the extent of her betrayal. Her actions have solidified my resolve in how I've handled the situation, leaving me with no regrets. The catalyst for her drunken confession to Carol wasn't just my unpredictability, but also the AP's distancing himself following the notice of my sale of his loan to the trust. It's evident that the AP had ulterior motives, seeking Jane's assistance with his financial dealings with me, while Jane was enticed by the prospect of a more glamorous life. Their mutual deception highlights their character, reinforcing my decision against reconciliation. AP's displeasure with my daughter's actions, particularly the impending forensic audit of his company, is palpable. Despite his attempts to secure funding to settle his loan, his reputation has suffered among my business contacts. My daughter is determined to ensure the company's continuity for its employees' sake, suspecting possible discrepancies in its financial records. Family time has been a highlight, from attending a high school basketball game to hosting a poker night and enjoying meals together. Carol's visit, bringing dinner one evening, was welcomed, though I maintained a cautious distance, still uneasy about letting her get too close. The farm continues to be a source of comfort. Whether checking on the animals, the fences, or assisting with maintenance, the knowledge that it will remain within the family and continue operating brings me peace. I've also welcomed numerous friends and acquaintances for visits. The concept of a living wake has been suggested, and I've embraced the idea, encouraging anyone who wishes to see me to come by. These visits, possibly the last with some, are meaningful and appreciated. Story 2. Wife is out getting laid right now. Never thought I'd find myself in this situation, but yet here I am. This weekend, my wife and our daughter went to visit her mother. I couldn't join them because I was unable to take time off work, so we decided it would be a girls' weekend for them. I work as a firefighter in a large city in the southern United States. While I was gearing up for a call, our dispatcher informed us of an emergency. Since I wasn't needed on the work call, I checked my cell phone and discovered a bunch of texts from my daughter, and a couple from a number I didn't recognize. Through about 11 text messages, I learned that my daughter had gone ice skating, fallen, and broken her wrist. She was in the emergency room, but couldn't receive treatment because no one could locate my wife. The unfamiliar number turned out to belong to a friend of my wife's who had gone to the emergency room to accompany my daughter. She had been the chaperone for the girls' skating outing. So I called this friend, and after much evasion, she revealed that my wife had gone to dinner with some man she met randomly. We always share our locations with each other because of my job. I checked and found an address, which, after a quick Google search, turned out to be a hotel. This was at 10 p.m. It's now almost 4 hours later, and she hasn't responded to my texts. However, she did eventually call our daughter. I provided the permission and insurance information, and our daughter received a cast and a referral to see an orthopedist upon returning home. The friend took our daughter back to her grandmother's house and texted me. She apologized, saying, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way about X." She mentioned a man's name. It appears this has been happening every time she visits her hometown without me. Meanwhile, I've worked countless hours of overtime to pay off our house, take us on nice vacations, and send our daughter to the most expensive private school in our city. I feel like a fool. First update. Spoke with a lawyer, as many of you suggested. During that conversation, I realized that she doesn't really have much access to money that is solely hers. I removed her as an authorized user of my credit cards and implemented two-factor authentication on just about everything else she might try to access. I pulled my credit report and discovered that she had opened a joint credit card without my knowledge. Since I'm also listed on the account, I was able to log in and print out the charges. A nearly perfect timeline of restaurants and hotels she has paid for. It turns out she also has accounts on Tinder and Bumble, which I found when I combed through the last few phone bills. I have a friend who is a deputy sheriff around here who will be present tonight when she returns home. I've arranged for her to stay in a room at a nearby hotel for the week, which I've paid for up front. She can stay there for now and figure things out on her own starting tomorrow. My daughter and I spoke, and she is aware of the situation and is angry at her mother. So the next steps are to find a professional for her to talk to. Thanks to my job, I have great insurance, so that's one less worry. I've also decided to come clean to her mother once my wife and daughter are on the plane back here. I'm taking a couple of days off to deal with this. Update 2. This will be the final update on this unfortunate situation. First off, thank you to everyone who offered their advice. It's astonishing how many fellow firefighters and law enforcement officers have reached out to me, sharing their similar experiences. I took a few days of personal leave from work to manage everything happening. My soon-to-be ex-wife, STBXW, and our daughter returned home late Sunday, and my daughter immediately retreated to her room and closed the door. My wife somewhat expectedly remarked, "I guess you must be pretty mad at me," to which I responded honestly. I said I felt numb. The anger would surface later, and it would be best if she stayed elsewhere for a while. My friend, the deputy sheriff, was present and offered to stay on the deck in case I needed him. I informed my wife that I was recording our conversation to protect myself and my rights as a husband and father, and she consented. At this point, she seemed to believe she could talk her way out of the situation. What I hadn't shared with her was that I had spent most of the past week consulting friends, my parents, my battalion chief at work, as well as a lawyer and a therapist. With a substantial amount of leave and supportive co-workers, I'm prepared to take months off if necessary to navigate through this. I expressed to her my disappointment, emphasizing my anger was primarily because our daughter was inadvertently harmed by her reckless actions. I accused her of jeopardizing our child's safety for her own desires. She neither admitted nor denied the accusations. However, her tone shifted, and she began reminiscing about the good times in an attempt to sway me. After a few attempts, I told her I couldn't trust those memories, unsure of what else she might have been doing during those times. When nostalgia failed, she resorted to claiming loneliness due to my work commitments. I reminded her of our mutual agreement on our financial future and early retirement plans. I became so infuriated at this point that I highlighted how her actions had compromised our ability to retire early. I pointedly told her to remember our plans because now she would have to fend for herself, working until an advanced age. A thought I found slightly vindicating given the circumstances. A colleague from work, who is also a friend and has vacationed with us, made a keen observation. He noted that during our trips, there were always moments when my wife found reasons to be away from the family. Suspecting a pattern, I confronted her, suggesting this wasn't her first indiscretion, but merely the first time she was caught. She silently acknowledged the truth, confirming my suspicions with a quiet, "Yes." This admission was captured on the recording. She proceeded to the hotel without any objection. She sent me long emails filled with apologies and confessions of uncertainty about her actions. I chose not to respond. Even before she returned, I had informed her mother about the incident, detailing how she was at a hotel with another man while our daughter needed her in the emergency room, and about the secret credit card. Her mother remained largely silent during our conversation, but I warned her against any complicity in my wife's misdeeds, threatening to restrict her access to our daughter. Admittedly, I was overwhelmed by anger when I made that statement. The mother-in-law insisted she was oblivious to these actions, expressing grave concern for her daughter's whereabouts during the unaccounted time. I also made it clear to her that I was inclined to prevent my wife from returning home, hoping she would understand that I've upheld my commitments since our engagement without resorting to yelling, violence, or infidelity. This seemed to strike a chord, perhaps because my wife's parents divorced over her father's infidelities during her teenage years. I messaged the friend who accompanied my daughter to the ER, expressing my gratitude for her support, yet also confronting her about any prior knowledge of my wife's whereabouts. I highlighted the role such knowledge, if withheld, played in the disintegration of my family, and criticized the encouragement of such destructive behavior. I'm still contemplating how to approach her husband, suspecting that both women might have been influencing each other negatively. On Thursday morning, my wife texted me that her mother had arranged a furnished apartment nearby for her and requested to collect some personal items from our home on Friday. I agreed to her request. It's worth noting that throughout this ordeal, she barely communicated with our daughter, nor did she inquire about her well-being, even when discussing her new living arrangement. I informed her that I wouldn't be working on Friday, but would be away for a few hours, allowing her time to collect her belongings. However, I arranged for a process server to deliver divorce papers to her upon her arrival, which also included a notice of my intent to seek sole custody and her visitation rights. Her voicemail response was one of uncontrollable fury. I have never heard her so irate or disturbed. Additionally, my lawyer recommended getting a new cell phone to limit her direct access to me. I've only shared the new number with a select few, checking the old phone periodically for necessary communications. Despite the wealth of advice available, I see no need for a paternity test, as my daughter and I share a striking resemblance. An STD panel is on my to-do list, although I anticipate no issues. My wife has since retained legal representation, but I've made my intentions clear regarding my and my daughter's residence. Family law complexities might necessitate a significant financial settlement on my part, but I'm beyond concerned with the cost if it expedites the process. Story 3. My ex attempted to cheat. However, it did not work out in his favor. After a period, my ex began to sleep with his phone in his pocket, a peculiar red flag, but I never mentioned it. When I noticed he would not even use his phone in front of me, I knew something was amiss. One night it slipped out of his sweatpants, and I woke up with it near my legs. I intended to simply place it on the charger, honestly, but I saw he had numerous notifications and messages from a dating app. Honestly, I wanted to wake him up with a slap, but I refrained. So, I created a profile using a friend of mine's pictures, whom he had never met, and I had her approval. She was precisely his type, and I knew he adored blue eyes. So, when we matched, as I anticipated, we began chatting. We conversed for about a week before I suggested meeting up. There was flirting, sexual conversation. He informed her, me, that he was single and lived with a roommate. So, I suggested he pay for a hotel room so we could have sex. He agreed. We chose a location. Bear in mind, I paid for everything because he was unemployed after losing his job. He depleted my savings account over the year through manipulation. We're family. We take care of each other when we're in tough spots. He would say whenever I mentioned I did not have extra money. I paid my student loans, all the bills for a one-bedroom apartment, and for the food. This boy had the audacity to ask me for money in person, saying his mother's birthday was approaching, and he wanted to buy her something nice. So, I gave him $50, just because it was hilarious at that point. I still think about the smile on his face at that moment. That weekend, he left, saying he was going to his mother's, and that he would probably stay the night. I kissed him goodbye and told him to have a great time. Then, I packed all his stuff and left it outside. I live in a US city, so it disappeared quickly. I got the locks changed. He messaged me a few times on the app. I told him I was running late because I wanted to look perfect, but I was coming, and so sorry. My friend also sent me some sexy pictures to send him that didn't fully include her face. She's a true friend. I even talked him into masturbating and sending me a video. Then, after making him wait until about 1 a.m., I messaged him on the dating app a picture of his belongings being rummaged through by a homeless man and to enjoy his stay in a hotel. As soon as my phone rang, I blocked his number and went to bed. He was outside my door the Monday I came home from work, crying uncontrollably, begging, telling me he was homeless and had nowhere to go. When I was not sympathetic, he got angry, as usual. Once he started grabbing and trying to get into my apartment, I called the police. I filed a restraining order because he threatened my life and my pets for evicting him. I found out he ended up moving a few hours away where his only family is and has a job. Hopefully, he learned something. Story 4. I still regret it. It has been 35 years, and I still regret leaving. I do not know why I am posting this, but I have to get this off my chest. I, a 60-year-old man, got married young at 18. I married my high school sweetheart, who was smart, funny, kind, and the kind of person who could captivate a room, very extroverted. Although I am incredibly introverted, we were a good match. By the time we were 25, we had 2 small children, and I was happy with how my life was. Then my wife got a new job, and she was excelling, getting promotions, working later. I think you see where this is going. You are wrong, by the way. I cheated on her. While she was out working late to make money to support our children, I was building up resentment towards her. She wasn't home to make dinner, and I never bothered to learn to cook. Laundry would pile up for a few days because I didn't do it, and I was doing the school run because she was at work. But I never voiced how I felt. And every day my beautiful wife would come home, I would put on a front and pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. I know if I had told her how I felt, she would have listened, but I didn't. I met a woman at a work event, and we spoke over the phone constantly for a few weeks. Things turned inappropriate quickly, and I didn't stop it. I wrote my wife a birthday card, telling her how much I loved her, and that she was an amazing person. Then 2 weeks later, I walked out on her. And the worst part was, she never screamed at me or yelled. She just stood there and watched me take my things while my children were in the other room, completely oblivious to what was going on. She just stood there silently crying. I broke the best person in my life. She ended up losing her job because she couldn't manage the school run or extra child arrangements. So, my alimony payments had to go up, and I resented her for that. Looking back on it now, how selfish could I be? The woman whom I betrayed, and who was now single-handedly raising my children, needed more money to care for them. I saw them every other Saturday, but that was it. My affair partner and I fizzled almost immediately. She didn't want something with me, and she really didn't want something with me when I was almost broke from paying alimony. My wife was and still is the strongest person I know. She never let me know how much I hurt her. But I heard her crying herself to sleep every night I had to stay over for something with the kids. I spent years resenting my wife for stealing my money, when in reality, I knew it was my fault, and I still loved her, but was too proud to say. And even though I left, it was she who eventually filed for divorce. Because every time she asked me if I had gotten a lawyer, I would say, I'm not ready. Eventually, she filed because she said it was too painful. I said some really awful things to her when I was angry. Like, I didn't love you for a long time. I stayed for the children. And every time, she just said nothing back. I'll never forgive myself for that. She wanted to try to make it work. She fought for me every day for months, and I wasn't interested. She loved me even when I hated her. Then she met Mark. He was older, wiser, and he loved her the way I should have loved her. He was and is a good man to her and my children. Watching someone else love the person you were supposed to love forever is quite possibly the worst thing I've ever had to do. I blurted out, I love you to her 2 weeks before her wedding, and she looked at me and said, then you should have fought for me because I would have loved you forever if you'd let me. On the day of her wedding, I sat outside the church in my car, telling myself I would object to the wedding, but I didn't. That was 30 years ago, and seeing that written in front of me now is just as painful as it was hearing it all those years ago. Having to watch her with him all these years has been my punishment, and I've had the odd relationship but nothing serious. I will never forgive myself for what I did. It should have been our 42nd wedding anniversary today. I don't think anyone survives infidelity entirely. I think you learn to live with it. Story 5. Should I tell his pregnant wife? Honestly, I'm just really struggling with what to do and could use some advice. I, a 34-year-old female, met a 32-year-old male on a chat site a couple of months ago. After a couple of days of chatting publicly in a chat room and on camera, we exchanged Snapchats at his request. It wasn't remotely romantic at first. We just really seemed to hit it off, sending video snaps back and forth, learning about each other's lives, etc. For context, I am American, and he is Australian, so the times we could chat were kind of weird. Mostly late afternoon to late evening for me, and early morning to late afternoon for him. Basically his work hours. After a couple of weeks, we were literally sending snaps back and forth for like 7 hours a day, every day. Despite living across the world from one another, we related on a lot. He told me 18 months ago an 11-year relationship he had ended, and a big factor in that was him and his fiancée having a miscarriage at 20-something weeks. This is something that really resonated with me as I had a miscarriage in my last relationship, which resulted in a breakup. Plus, I had also been in an 11-year relationship. Aside from that, he was just the nicest, most caring guy I had ever spoken to. I felt so seen, listened to, and respected. He was constantly telling me how in awe he was of my beauty, passion, and intelligence, and things started to get kind of romantic, and ultimately sexual. There were videos and pictures and the whole shebang. However, it was not at all just sexually driven. He was super respectful of me and constantly told me how he didn't just want something sexual with me, how he wished he could just come home to me every day, how special he thought I was, and that the more he gets to know me, the more he likes me. A month in, and we were sharing, what I thought, was every detail of our lives with each other. We talked about past traumas. We would snap with our friends and family around, which he told me they all knew about me. And he was telling me how he was looking into tickets to America, which he said are pretty expensive, but you're worth it. He was going so far as to say things like, I really, really like you. I'm legitimately falling for you. I want to tell you that other word, but I'll refrain. I want you in my life, like forever. I haven't felt like this about someone in a really long time. You make me so happy, and I just want to make you feel so special. The worst part of my day is when I leave work and have to go home to a house alone, and then you're asleep, and I can't talk to you. However, there were always a few things I found strange about him. He told me he hates technology and using his phone, so on weekends he chooses to just be out in nature with his mates and doesn't check it much. He also told me that due to him losing his son, he deleted all social media. I also had asked him his last name, but a Google search of him turned up literally nothing. Well, yesterday morning, I decided to go super internet sleuth to try to find a trace of this man on the internet. He wears shirts to his job that have the name of the company on it, so I Googled that, his first name, and his city, and lo and behold, a LinkedIn came up, but the last name was different. From there, I found an Instagram and a Facebook, with pictures of a wedding from January 2021. This man told me he was engaged but never married. I sent him a message once again, asking him to confirm the fake last name he gave me, and he assured me that was him. That's when I confronted him and said that I know he's lying, but I didn't specify about what. This man crumbled like a house of cards. He told me he's married and his wife is pregnant. He said he's been lying to me and her. He said he's a piece of shit, etc. He was freaking out about the possibility I might ruin his life, and maybe I was already calling his wife. He asked me not to involve her. I didn't reply at all. Within an hour, he had deleted his Snapchat completely, our only means of communication. I'm assuming he thought this would delete all evidence. What he didn't know is that I recorded myself on webcam opening all of his snaps yesterday. This includes the first ones too, before he knew that I knew, where he literally starts by saying, "Welcome to the best part of my day, when I get to talk to you all day long." And of course, it includes his confession. Should I tell his wife? My friends are torn. I don't want to hurt a pregnant woman who will likely be blindsided. They've been together 12 years. But I have to imagine he will keep doing this. And the level of emotional cheating is pretty severe. I mean, this guy would walk me around his house, their house, and say things like, "Yeah, I was originally building this house for my family to live in, but obviously that didn't work out. You can be the first one to use my bathtub." I mean, I think he's the absolute scum of the earth, and I hate him for what he's done to me. False hope after divulging to him my past heartbreaks. But what he's done to her is so much worse. Story 6. Fiancé cheated on me in a gym. It has been nearly a year since it happened, and I still have not processed it properly. I thought I had met my dream girl. She honestly came across as the sweetest and most innocent person, but she was living a double life right under my nose. We had been engaged for a few months and were very excited about starting our life together. We were quite young, in our 20s. I was working my butt off in 2 jobs to get us set up financially. She had a job, but it was a small salary, and she was still studying on the side. I was extremely committed and wanted to give us a good life. We were trying to live a healthier lifestyle together by eating better and exercising regularly. The topic of getting a gym membership then came up. We discussed each getting a membership so we could go to the gym together. Anyway, then one day, she told me out of the blue that she had signed herself up at a different gym instead of the original one we planned on going to. I did not think much of it and did not mind. I thought it was a bit weird, but I was happy to gym alone at the original one. Her new gym was too far away from where I lived. We were not living together. So a little while goes by, about a week. She has gone to the gym a few times. I have been nice, asked if she is enjoying it, etc. All seems okay, but she starts acting a bit weird. She is being distant and snappy, and I do not know why. A few days pass, and it just gets worse. She starts becoming extremely aggressive towards me for no reason and would not open up. This started to give me a very suspicious feeling, and I wanted to figure out what was going on. So, I did some digging and remembered that she logged into her Instagram a while ago on my computer. I checked and thankfully still had access to her account, but what I found was horrifying. I found a long chat between her and a guy who worked at the gym. The chat spanned over a week or so, and started fairly casual, like, thanks for helping me sign up, etc. But then it got very sexual very quickly. I had to read about the things they wanted to do to each other, and then the things they did do to each other. And guess where they hooked up? In the gym's office. I was disgusted, shocked, and literally sick to my stomach. I phoned her immediately and told her what I found and that it was over. She first denied it, but when she realized I saw the chat, she just hung up on me. Also, I do not mean this in a nasty way, but the guy she hooked up with was really not a typically attractive guy. I am a good-looking guy. Tall, green eyes, dark hair, and toned. She went for a slob over me, and I cannot understand why. I then phoned her parents to tell them what happened. At first, they said, "That is impossible. She is nothing like that." I then sent them the chat. After they took a while processing it, they tried to shift blame onto me. They said I neglected her and was too busy with work. What the heck? I was working hard to provide for her. She never took accountability and never even apologized to me. I haven't spoken to her since. It feels traumatic. Story 7. Sister will screw the family up. Hear me out. My sister and her husband have had their ups and downs. They were high school sweethearts but separated for a while before getting back together in their late 20s. 3 kids later, and having moved back to the state we live in, we see them a lot more often than we used to, and so does the family. Our family is very close with our aunt's family. We grew up with them, and I consider them sisters more than I consider them cousins. One of them, let's name her Mary, is married to Mark. Mark is extremely jealous and manipulative. They have 5 kids. That being said, she loves him dearly. Back to my sister. I asked to borrow her phone to call my boyfriend, but when I did, I noticed that she and Mark were texting. He was telling her he was on his way to see her. It's not the first time I've seen their texts. This has been going on for months. They talk all day, and the texts get inappropriate. She got drunk last weekend and was crying over a guy she's in love with but can't or shouldn't be in love with. I have a very strong feeling it's Mark. I went to a party yesterday where Mark showed up alone, and I had to leave him with my sister to go tend to my kids. My sister is and has been unfaithful for years with a lot of men and women. Her husband is aware but has his things on the side also. That's a story for another day. But my sister, she is not to be trusted. Would you talk to your cousin about it, knowing it will most likely lead to nothing except drama between your family? I talked to my mother about it, and she's also confused about what to do. I don't want my cousin to know I knew something was up, but I also don't want to screw up my relationship with my sister. Any thoughts? Update. A while ago, I posted about how my sister was having an affair with my cousin's husband, Mark. I debated long and hard about talking to my cousin about it, and after much consideration, and against my husband's advice, I decided to tell my cousin about it. She is one of my closest friends, and almost all of my childhood memories include her. She's family, and family doesn't screw with family. Of course, things blew up. The next day, my sister asked me if I had said anything to my cousin as revenge. Not knowing what she meant, I asked why I would want revenge in the first place. She said I might have seen the conversations she's been having with my husband and got mad. Wait, what? First of all, my husband and I have been together for 14 years. He has cheated on me and held inappropriate conversations with girls before, and we separated in 2020. We got back together in 2021 and decided to make it work for our 3 kids. I was completely unaware that he was talking to her. Apparently, she's been talking to him about her affair with the cousin's husband. I can't know if it's the truth because he deleted all the texts. She says he told her to delete everything, while he says she told him to delete everything. Either way, they've been talking behind my back for months. He usually texts her first, and from the screenshots I've seen, it's mostly innocent. But at least twice a week, he messages her to see how she's doing, and to talk about their day and their life. He promised me last Wednesday he would never talk to her again and delete the texts. Then he texted her Thursday first thing when he got to his work to see how she was feeling. He said he didn't, and that I needed psychiatric help because I didn't believe him, but he knew details I had not told him, so I asked my sister to tell me the truth, or they would both lose me. A few moments later, my sister told me the truth. Again, everything has been deleted. I'm mad at both at this point, and unsure what to think. Story 8. Wife cheated with coworker. My wife, who is 42, and I, a 44-year-old man, have been married for 19 years and have been together for 25 years. We have 3 great children under the age of 14. In 2015, she lost her mother to cancer, and in 2016, her father also passed away from cancer. This sent her into a deep depression. For the following 2 years, I took care of the kids while she worked. A dead bedroom situation started during this time. Nothing made her happy. Now, because she didn't talk to me, I started playing video games when the kids went to bed. After 2 years, she began coming out of her depression. She talked more and wanted to do stuff with the family. We started being physical again. This went on for a year, and then I lost my father. This sent me into a depression because we were very close. Like my wife, I closed myself off from her. I started playing video games more and ignored my wife. I never stopped saying, "I love you," giving hugs, or taking her out. We started sleeping in different rooms because our son had a medical condition that required us to keep an eye on him at night. So, I slept in his room. I moved my Xbox in there and played video games for a couple of hours until I fell asleep. Then, COVID happened. My kids' school went remote, and my wife started working from home. My wife's job required her to start looking for supplies to reopen her business when the restrictions ended. She started working closely with another member of her company. After a few months, she began being distant and stopped communicating with me. I tried to keep telling her I love her and buying small gifts to show my love and appreciation. We decided that for the 2020 to 2021 school year, we would keep our kids at home for remote learning because our son had a serious medical condition. I was so busy with the kids' school, I really didn't notice the distance getting worse until much later. The dead bedroom situation started again. Then, in the summer of 2021, I started to work for Lyft because we needed extra money. I worked on the days she worked from home so she could be close to our son's school. In the fall of 2021, I picked up a lady from the airport and drove her to her hotel downtown. During this ride, she talked to her female friend on the phone about her meeting her affair partner to have sex because they are both in town for business. She said her husband was at home with the kids and was playing video games. They haven't had sex in over a year. He is too busy to know she's cheating. I started thinking this sounds like us. So, I started being more affectionate and more loving. I'm already a loving and affectionate person. Nothing changed. The distance was getting worse. I wrote a letter telling her I love her, and I know there is distance between us. I want to work it out, but she has to be willing to work on us. She said she would try to be better. For the next year, she showed hardly any affection and didn't want sex because her depression pills gave her no sex drive. We barely held hands and didn't say she loves me unless I said it first. When we were in the car together, she slept, so she didn't talk. Discovery Day was May 4th of this year. My wife went into the office. I went to work and was texting her during the day with no response. Then she finally called me, and I told her I had been texting her all day. She tells me she never got my texts because of the signal in her office. She has Google Chat, so I messaged her there, and it would show up on her work computer. No responses. She got home, and after we put the kids to sleep, she took a shower. This is where I finally broke down and checked her phone. Now, May 4th is a big Star Wars day. May the 4th be with you. So, I checked her texts from me. It's true, she didn't get them until she left the office. I checked Google Chat. This is where I found out she was cheating. She woke up this day and messaged him on Google Chat with all the May the 4th gifts. I am a Star Wars fan as well. Did I get one? Absolutely not. So, I checked all their messages, and the affair has been going on for almost 3 years. There were tons of "I miss you" and "I love you." I feel so stupid. I am completely devastated. This guy moved to Kansas in 2020, but comes into the office 1 week a month since he works remotely the other weeks. I guess when they would have Zoom meetings with each other to get their business open, he began to flirt. In the past, when guys would flirt with her, she would shoot them down. This guy wasn't as handsome as me. I'm not a 10. I have a little dad bod. Maybe I'm a 6, 7. He was a 4. She began to flirt back. Then they would go to lunch together. Then the lunches turned into going to his hotel room for lunchtime sex. And she told me she had to work late to have more sex. I even saw a text to her friend saying the sex wasn't better. She just craved the attention. So, I screenshot everything to myself. I didn't say anything. I was having surgery in the summer and needed her help. After surgery, we had decided to move closer to family. She barely helped me look for houses. I checked her phone again in October. I guess the relationship came to an end in June before my surgery. He was mad that she was taking time to care for me and the kids. I was wondering why she became more affectionate and loving, and wanting to have sexy time with me after I healed. Last week, we got into a huge argument because she started being distant and wasn't communicating again. So, I yelled and told her I knew she cheated with a coworker. She denied it and said I was overreacting. Then I showed her the evidence. Then she stopped yelling and putting me down and started crying. I just left and went to my sister's house. I came back home to be with the kids for Christmas. Then, I will leave again. I told her I am filing for divorce after the new year. She cried and asked who will drive her to work and pick her up, who will help her with the kids. I told her to ask her affair partner. Then she started crying more, saying we can work it out and do marriage counseling. I will seek full custody when I file for divorce, also alimony and child support. 25 years I feel is wasted.